want to welcome everybody. This is our regular Sabbath meeting here in the UK. Let's open with a word of prayer. Holy God, we thank you. Want to be guided and blessed by your Holy Spirit today. As we study your word, I pray that you would guide, bless, and direct us so that we might have a clearer understanding of the truths of end time prophecy. Pray in Jesus' name. Amen. It's been a while since being with everybody. Everybody's having a good time. Sorry? World War III. So I wanted to look at Revelation chapter 17, if we could all turn there. The reason we want to go there is because recently, I think it was perhaps in Brazil, I'm guessing, that I spoke about Revelation 17. No, not Brazil, this was Australia. This is Australia, January this year. And I'm just looking for the message that I received. So I made a comment on Revelation 17 verses 1 and 2 in Australia, and one of the members there didn't agree with the thought that I had shared. So we had a bit of a discussion at that camp meeting. And then I got a message from Emma, and I'm trying to search for it now and I can't see it, which is what I'm looking for. So we have a slightly different view of Revelation 17, particularly verses 1 and 2. And I just wanted to have a discussion on it today, if we're all willing to. So I read the two verses. I found the passage, by the way. So Revelation 17, I'm going to say verses 1 to 3. And I think we all know that there has been some discussion that I maybe have generated or initiated that speaks about looking at prophecy dispensationally. Is it double L? Dispensationally. And so that's not a new word. That's something that we're all familiar with. And maybe someone can give us a definition of what they think dispensational means. And I've used a word which I proposed was called panoramic. That double L as well?
Yeah.
Panoramically. So can anybody tell me what they think those two words mean really simply?
Dispensationally is like segments, and panoramically is like the whole. But I think I might is it the panoramic? I'm not quite sure about the panoramic because I thought it one way and then someone said something else and it unsettled me again.
Well, you tell me what you think it is, Richard.
I thought it was the complete. uh,
Complete
Yes,
and dispensational.
like segments, if it were
Segments.
easier.
Okay. Anyone else? I notice only a few of us have their videos on, so I can't see you. Titus, I can't hear you properly, Titus. Have you given up? Have we lost Titus?
Never got a good voice, has he? No, but then sometimes it's something like it.
Okay, so we'll wait for Titus to come back. Anyone else?
I think I would add that dispensationally, it's a segment, but it has it's a, a unit in and of itself. It's not any segment. It has to have a certain story that it tells in and of itself.
A beginning and an end in the segment.
Are you
I
okay
don't
with
know.
Andres, that descriptor that it has to have a specific beginning and ending?
Yeah, I think so in general. Yeah.
Okay, so if this was a complete story and we had three dispensations, then these dispensations, you're saying, have to be telling a particular story?
Yeah, or it has to have, and I'm just thinking this is as of right now, but it has to have a certain self-contained sense, that it has to make sense. Like, for example, I'm thinking of a picture of a landscape, and then if you say that you take a portion of it, that portion usually it's, for example, you want to capture a tree that's in a particular portion of that landscape. So it's not like you take a picture of half of the tree, you have to take the whole tree. That, I don't know if that makes sense.
Anyone else? So I'll give a bit of a dictionary definition then. Dispensation can mean several different things, but in the context in which I think we're using it, it's a period of time. So maybe I could just begin with that. A period of time. Anyone who wants to finish my sentence?
In history.
A period of time in history. So I've got a period of time in history. And in the context that we're using it, it's got something to do with God doing something. And what's how would we demarcate 1, 2, and 3?
We would say dispensations, wouldn't we?
Yes, but I'm trying to understand the definition of dispensation. So I've got what I've put on the board is a dispensation is a period of time when God deals in a specific way, normally with human beings. So either there might be a certain set of rules that apply to that period of time, or there's something unique about it which distinguishes that period of time from another one. Are people okay with that explanation? I think that's what Andreas was suggesting. It's a period of time that has something specific about it that may or may not be replicated in other times. And if it is replicated, there are some differences.
Could it be revelations?
They don't have to be revelations because
Right.
they can just be straight historical events.
Right, okay.
So we could say that in that period of time, God behaved or interacted with humans in a certain way. And in another period of time, God behaved or communicated or interacted with humans in a different way. We could say a period of time where the world looked one way, and then afterwards it looked very different. So before the flood, after the flood, very different. The world's very different. God tends to behave and interact with people differently. So if we're okay with that, we had some discussion, I think, at the last UK camp meeting, several weeks ago, I think, where we discussed what panoramic meant. So I know there was some disagreement on that. So can anybody tell me what they think panoramic means? I'll go with Emma.
So I think it means timeless. So it's showing no change, whereas dispensation shows change.
So Emma says no change. And dispensation means I've got God deals in a specific way. So I'm going to put change in parentheses. So there is change in dispensations, and in a panoramic model, there is no change.
Yeah.
Titus has put principle for panoramically and policy for dispensationally.
So if we're going to use the word principle, I want us to understand what that would mean, what it would look like. So I'm going to put a general picture. Or description. So it's a general picture or description. Blessing.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, I wanted to suggest that panoramic view is a single view. A dispensational one is composed of multiple views. So you can have multiple dispensational views, but only one panoramic view. It's a single picture.
Okay, so I'll put single. Did someone write something on the chat? If they have, someone can read it out to us. If it's of significance.
Yeah, I was just talking about dispensation. Maintains that history is divided into multiple ages.
Okay. Is what's on the board sufficient to say that? period of time God deals with in a very specific way, and there's change in periods of history.
Cedric put a wider view and more detail. It expands and grows.
Okay, so I've got a wider view and I've got a detailed view. Nyasha and then Andreas.
Okay, sorry, it's Ignatius.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, so there's a part that I did not understand from the first presentation of this dispensational and panoramic view, and lucky enough we are looking at it today, and it's written on the board. What does the no change and change actually mean in a more simple way?
So
What we okay.
in the dispensational setting, from one dispensation to another, so from 1 to 2, there can be change. Things can be different. So without giving an example, does that make sense? 1 and 2 would be different. There would be a change of some sort.
Yes.
And in a panoramic dynamic or situation, there is no change. Everything remains the same.
Okay. So okay, talking about Revelation chapter 17 in particular, the panoramic view,
So
when we say there is no change, we are
what
saying that
what becomes risky is if we go to the chapter itself to try and explain the terms, we end up using like a circular argument, and we won't know if we're correct in that. So I don't want to go specifically to Revelation 17 to describe those two concepts, because
or
because we want to take those concepts and see if they're in Revelation 17. So we can't use Revelation 17 to prove that they're there. Hope that
okay,
makes sense.
all right.
If I
Okay,
gave
so because
I'll give an example, which I don't like to do because it's a bit early to do that, because we end up thinking that we're correct when we could be wrong. So in the dispensational view, we would have the antediluvian world. Pre-flood is one dispensation, and after the flood would be another dispensation. So they're two very different worlds. Dispensation 1, dispensation 2. We could have the Garden of Eden before sin, Genesis 2, after sin, Genesis 3. Very different worlds. So they would be two different dispensations.
okay, that's understandable.
The Old
O-
Testament and the New Testament.
Okay. Then let's go to panoramic using the same examples.
So the panoramic becomes harder to conceptualize. So before I give an answer, I let Andreas comment, because he may have something useful to say.
So I have two things that I was thinking. One, that the whole picture, the panoramic, has to integrate all of the dispensations. Like the story that it tells cannot contradict one of the dispensations. That's one thing. And then
Let me just stop there for a second. If a dispensational concept and a panoramic concept are talking about the same story, so dispensations 1, 2, and 3 that I've got on the board, and then a panoramic view that I've also got on the board, if they were dealing with the same subject or the same story, then So let me just put that. So I'm going to put a little graphic here, which is supposed to be the same length. And I'm going to say no. Now I'm going to put single picture. Can you just repeat what you said, Andreas?
Yeah, that the single picture cannot be in some kind of disagreement or contradiction with the picture, with one of the pictures or with any of the pictures that make up the whole thing.
Okay. So I'll just try to tell me if this is correct, what I'm going to just say now, based upon what you've just said. Look at dispensation 1 just on its own. So dispensation 1 would have to look, no, the panoramic view, that single picture, has to look the same as dispensation 1, and it has to look the same as dispensation 2, and it has to look the same as dispensation 3, even though 1, 2, and 3 look different. So 1, 2, and 3 look different, but the panoramic or the single picture has to look the same as all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Independently, not the combination of all 3 of them. It has to look the same as all 3 of them individually.
Well, no, it has to integrate them all, but it doesn't have to look, it wouldn't, in that way that you put it, it wouldn't be able to look independently the same as each.
Tell me if you're saying this, 1 plus 2 plus 3, that's those 3 dispensations, equals the single picture. Is that what you've just said?
Yeah.
So number 1 had a tree in it. Number 2 had a rose or a tulip. And number 3 had corn. So it's 3 different dispensations about 3 different items. And you're saying that the single picture has to have a tree, has to have a tulip, and it has to have wheat in it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I think so, yeah.
Does that make sense, Ignatius?
Yeah, it makes better sense now.
Okay.
So that means there is no change there.
Before it makes better sense to you, let me say something, unless someone else wants to say something. So I'm going to suggest that this is not the single picture. Emma's whispering something.
I was going to say, no, I don't.
Okay, so forget me. Emma's disagreeing on that. So let me ask this then. In dispensation 1, you don't have a tree. Let's call it vegetation or a plant. Is a tree a plant? Yes. And in dispensation 2, a tulip is also vegetation and it's a plant. And number 3 is also vegetation and it's also a plant. So we have dispensation 1 is a plant, and a plant. And does that equal the single picture? So Emma's saying yes to that. So before I go to Andreas, Ignatius, can you see the difference between this model 1 and this model 2? They're identical in the sense that it's talking about plants. So we've got a tree, a tulip, and wheat, but they're all very different plants. So as soon as we don't explain them in detail, like it's a tree or a flower or wheat, but we just say they're plants, then that is the case. So let me redraw that. Number one is this big, and number two is this big, and number three is this big. Hopefully we all agree with that. And if you were to add them together, 1, 2, that would be the whole picture. But it's not quite the same as a panoramic model in the way that we are explaining it. So that the single picture that we've got there could fit into here, and it could fit into here, and it could fit into here. So you have a single picture that goes all the way from beginning to end, and it never changes. So whatever dispensation you're in, the single picture always remains the same. And so then what you're faced with doing is coming up with a descriptor, a description, should I say, that always works. So if we use the word tree or flower, we know that it doesn't work all the way through. But if we use the word plant, then it works all the way through. We will always have a plant in this story. And the plant will always be the same thing, a plant. But if we use the words tree or flower or wheat, we end up having three very different objects, and it won't work to have that as a panoramic view. Ignatius, can you see the difference between the two?
Yes, I can see it. So what we are doing is we are trying to define what a view must be like in order for it to qualify to be called panoramic.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, so panoramic is, from my understanding, is like on a phone, you can take a photo that's panoramic. So
Shall I finish what you're going to say? Have we lost you? Have we lost them? We've lost them, I think. I'll wait for them to come back. Blessing, did you want to say something? You had your hand up and you took it down.
No,
Was that a no?
no.
Okay. Andreas, I'll wait for Ignatius. I'll wait for Ignatius to come back. But do you want to say anything, Andreas?
So the other thing or concept that I was thinking about as I was also like looking at the definition, there's the concept that the sum of the parts is not equal to, so that the dispensation, it's, or something, the general principle is not necessarily equal to the sum of its parts. Like, for example, if you have a watch and you look at the individual components that make it up, like the gears and the, like everything, when you put them together in a specific arrangement, then there's like a new property that emerges, which is like it's able to tell you the time, but there's no individual component that's able to do that in and of itself. So it kind of like creates a new entity. So it's not necessarily, if you just add them all up, it doesn't create something that tells you time. But if you add them in a particular way, that dispensation has a new property, or that panoramic has a new property.
So if you go to the top of the board, there's 1 + 2 + 3. I think that's what you had said. And then underneath that, I've got a number 1, and I just put a tree, a flower, and a shock of wheat. And I said that doesn't equal the single picture, which is, I think, what you've just said now. The summation of the 3 does not equal the single picture, which is why I said that's why it says it doesn't equal. But in number 2, what I've got there is I've generalized what those objects are. And I said they're all a form of vegetation. So I've just called them plants. So those plants, if I use the descriptor of plant, all of them are plants. And so plant works. So underneath that, what I've said is 1 + 2 + 3 is the whole picture. We agree with that. But what I've said is that dispensation 1 contained within it, if I just called it a plant, would have all the properties for the single picture or the panoramic view, as it would in 2, as it would in 3. And so when I've got single picture or panoramic view, it becomes the whole thing once you look at each dispensation to have identical properties shared between them. As soon as you make each dispensation different, it doesn't work. So each dispensation has to look identical. And the way you do that is by careful use of words or description. So I'll go back to Ignatius, and I don't know how much you caught of all of that, Ignatius. Does that sound
Yes,
okay with you?
it makes a lot of sense. My simplistic thinking was that when you stand at the pinnacle of a mountain and you're able to look from end to end, that's panoramic view. Then when you choose to say, okay, uh, I know I can see from point A to point Z because I'm at the top of the mountain. But then when you zoom into one aspect or one part of the whole picture, that's dispensation. That's in my simplistic way of thinking. So I don't know where I'm failing. What I failed to see is when we then force it to say that there should not be any change. How so? Because when I'm standing on the top of the mountain, I can see a car, a tree, and a cat.
So
You see now.
when we spoke about this recently, we live in a digital world where we've all got phones, and there's a new feature on our phones. It's not so new now. That's called panoramic. And if you go to number 1, if you took a picture and you begin on the left and you press the panoramic button on your phone and you sweep across, you will first see a tree, then a flower, then a field. And if you finish your picture there, you will have one picture that has 3 parts to it. 1 + 2 + 3 would be the panoramic picture that you take on your phone. So many of us now have got that concept or idea of the word panoramic to mean 3 individual pictures, a tree, a flower, and a field, all stitched together into a singular picture. In fact, that's how phones take pictures. They take multiple individual pictures, and there's some software in there that recognizes the beginning and end of each picture, and they stitch it together into one complete picture. So that's how we tend to understand panoramic. So I have been willing to consider using a different word. And when we spoke about it recently, several weeks ago, I don't think we came up with a different word. I think we were all content to keep the same word and understand it in a specific way, not the way that phone manufacturers use it. We're using that panoramic in a different way. So that's part of, I think, your difficulty, because you're viewing it the way your camera on your phone views it. This sweeping view of nature, and each part of that picture looks very different from one to the other. So when you say you zoomed in, if you zoomed into the left part of your picture, you'll see a tree. If you zoomed into the middle of your picture, the tree is not there. You'll see a flower. And then if you zoom to the right part, there is nothing there except a field. And that's how a phone takes a panoramic view, but that's not how it's being used in this example. It's used in a very different way.
Okay. So in that instance, I think we are together. I understand now.
Excellent. So when we do go to Revelation 17, we can demonstrate, because you wanted us to go there. So in Revelation 17, I'm going to suggest there are 7 dispensations, because it says that there are 7 heads, 7 mountains, etc. So 7 dispensations, and each one is very different. If you go to Babylon and you go to pagan Rome, you know that they look very, very different. Hopefully we're okay with that. And yet it says that there is, I'll call it one picture. Above here we've got single picture, no change. So 7 dispensation means there's a lot of change going on. There are 7 changes, and one picture means that there's no change. So when you take the concept of one picture with no change, it doesn't use heads to describe that. What does it use to describe the singular version of the same story? That's for anybody.
You need to rephrase the question.
So I'm going to say this is the story of heads. And in the one picture version of the same story, what are we picking up in the chapter there? We're in chapter 17. Well, you could be looking at verses. I didn't want to give the answer too easily.
You're looking for the dispensational panel.
We've done dispensational, 7 dispensationals, 7 dispensations. We know it's 7 because there are 7 heads. So I've got heads is the phrase or word that's used to describe or point out dispensations. What's used to describe the singular picture or the panoramic? Titus?
The woman.
Okay, so Titus said woman. Anyone else?
Scarlet coloured beast.
Anyone else?
Okay.
If you're okay, Richard, I'm just going to put the word beast and just slip out the scarlet coloured bit of it. Are you okay with that, Richard?
Yeah, yes.
So Titus said woman, and can anybody tell me why I didn't want to put woman there?
That's a different entity from the beast
Did you
that
get
the
that?
seven heads are part of.
Did you get that, Titus?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Because if we're going to go to heads, so the story is about heads dispensationally. And if we're going to take a panoramic picture of the same story, then we'd have to be dealing with the same thing. And that would then be the beast, not the woman. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay. So if that makes sense to you, Titus, then let me ask you this. So I'm going to put panoramic, and you said woman. Is that correct?
yeah,
One woman for the whole story. All good?
yeah.
Does the woman change?
I say yes.
We're dealing with the panoramic view, and in the panoramic
No.
view, we said here, no change.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay? So the woman doesn't change. How many
Changes heads, but not character.
how many women are there, Titus?
One.
Okay, so there's only one woman, and she doesn't change. Because if she changed, that wouldn't be a panoramic model. You okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so if the panoramic view is the woman, what's the dispensational view?
The heads.
Okay, so Richard, you've just done the same thing that
Okay.
Titus did, remember? And you corrected him. Can you see on the board there? When I put heads here, you said it had to be beast. When I said woman here, now you're going back to heads. You're doing the same thing that you corrected Titus over. Can you see that, Richard?
Yeah.
Okay, so it can't be heads. Natalie, did you say something? Mm-mm. So now you said nothing.
Is it the horns?
Sorry?
Is it the horns?
The horns. So, Richard, where are the horns located geographically? I don't mean like, don't give me some country or something. I mean geographically in the chapter.
At the end of the verse of 3.
No, I didn't mean which verse.
uh,
I saw a beast
yeah.
with 7 heads. Where are the heads? On the beast.
Yeah.
And if you, I don't know if you're reading the chat, but Marshall's
No.
the answer. The horns are geographically located where, Richard? If you can just read, you can just read what Marshall said if you want.
They'd usually be on the head, wouldn't they?
On the head, good, which is on the beast.
Yeah.
So,
So that's not right either.
so that can't be right either because we've got heads and beasts. That's all to do with one element of the story. So, woman, what's the dispensational view of the woman?
That's all 17 and 18.
We're only in chapter 17, not chapter 18. Okay, so I'm going to venture to say, because no
The
one's,
wilderness.
no, it can't be the wilderness. So I'm going to say, um, there isn't one. There's no dispensational view of the woman. And this has caused not only us, but theologians and students of prophecy problems since this was written. There's like 2,000 years. There is no dispensational view of the woman in this chapter.
Didn't we used to link the 1260 to the wilderness when John was taken in the spirit? Is that so? That was incorrect, obviously.
I think that's correct. No
But there's
problem with
still,
that?
even if you do that, there's still no dispensational view. Because I thought the 1,260 years would then be the dispensation.
So remember when you said in the one picture, you said a scarlet colored beast,
Yes.
and I just put beast.
So the scarlet coloured was the wilderness aspect of the beast.
So that's what most people understand it to be. And unless proven otherwise, we could say that. So in this first bit, we've got heads, which is something which is very different to a beast. We've got one beast and we've got heads. But when it comes to the woman, there is no other modeling that's given for the woman. Now, you might argue in verse 4 that the woman is scarlet colored. And we might say, well, she's scarlet colored in one dispensation, but she's not scarlet colored in another dispensation. So people will argue that, but it's still a woman.
If he's going to do it that way, that first part of verse 4, because the gold and precious stones is still not quite there yet. Daniel 11:43.
Sure, if you're going to go to other places, which perhaps we shouldn't do. But I'm going to put a question mark here. Emma.
Can you do it by action then? Could you say like verse 6, she's drunk with the blood of the saints, so that's a particular, like the martyrs of Jesus. But I agree, she's still a woman.
Yeah, it's not a woman, it's still the woman.
Still a woman, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What we have done in the past, rightly or wrongly, is we've said there's one beast, and we've said that's the same as 7 heads. And when we do that, remember we're going to do it the way that we've done here in this graphic, that each head, which is 1, 2, 3, that go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, each head must be the same as what? As the beast. Remember, we have it here. Dispensation 1 has to have all the same properties as the single picture. And the single picture in our example is the beast. And therefore, dispensation 1 or head number 1 has to be the beast. Are we okay with that? So
Doesn't that bring problems with head 6 though? Because either the beast isn't alive and the head is, or
yes. When we get into more details, we will have to refine that for sure. So I'm going to say the beast is a head. If we do that, then we can compare and contrast the two and say the one woman equals 7 women, one for each dispensation. Are we okay with that? So I'm going to put this one in quotation marks because we know that there are not 7 women in the chapter, but we can conceptualize that. So what we can say is that even though there's one woman, she can behave differently through the 7 dispensations, which is the same as saying there's a beast that behaves differently through each dispensation. Are we okay with that? So if you're okay with that, I assume that's what that silent means from everybody. If you don't understand, please tell me. Richard said something about what were you referring to, Richard, a minute ago? Did you say
that model that you just said there, 7B, 7 heads on B6 or
okay?
6 head? There's
So
a bit of a problem.
let's call it the sixth dispensation. In the sixth dispensation, so let's call it numbers. We'll have a line and we'll have 6. We okay with that? We've got 6 dispensations. And Richard said that there's a problem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Richard, are you okay if I said there's a head here? Because there are 7 heads.
Yes.
Okay, that's 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Earlier as well, could you
Let,
say you could say there were 7 different women? Could you just say that it's just an ideology progressing
let,
through different entities?
let's walk through this bit first before we go to the woman. We've got 7 heads. How many beasts do we have, Richard? 1 beast, yes?
Yes, but
Okay.
we assume there's a beast in each dispensation, though.
So I've got 1 beast, and we're not assuming anything. What we're saying is, if we use the definition for dispensation and the definition for panoramic, as we have done at the top of our board work, if we stick to that definition, then in the history 1, head 1, that beast which goes all the way through panoramically, that must be the same beast as head 1. So I'm going to put beast here. And I'm going to put beast here. It's always the same beast. So that's why it's not got any numbers to it. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
And so if I can do that, because it's 1 beast, what I can also then do is just call that 7 beasts. Are you okay with that? Richard?
The beast goes from the beginning to the end.
Yes, the
So
beast
yes,
is
yeah,
1 beast that goes all the way through history. It's
yes,
1 beast. And what we've done is, because we said here that this singular picture, I'm pointing to this bit, if you go to dispensation 1, that singular picture here, which I'm underlining now, is the same as that singular picture there, is the same as this one and this one. The singular picture, as you go through history, never changes. And so single picture 1 and 2 and 3 is the same as single picture here. So
yeah,
that's all I've done here. Is
yeah.
that fine? So I can just put beast all the way through from beginning to end. So you asked something about the 6th. You said in the history of the 6th. So we're looking at this history here. You said there was a problem. What's the problem for you, Richard? What problem do you see that you are highlighting for us? So I don't want us to have any.
So either only one of them was alive, either the head or the beast. Or was it the beast wasn't alive and the head was, or the head wasn't and the beast was?
So
Because it says one is not. One was and is not and shall ascend. One is not yet. Must continue a short
are
way.
you quoting a specific verse?
Um, well, 8, 10, and 11, isn't it?
The beast, when you said one, it doesn't say one, it says the beast. The beast that you saw.
In verse 8 it was, the beast that thou
Well,
sawest was, and
we'll
is
go with
not.
that one first then. The beast that you saw was alive, is not alive, and shall resurrect. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
So, in the history of the sixth, is there a beast?
No.
Does everybody agree with Richard that there's no beast? And we agree there's no beast?
It died and was resurrected.
So, is there a beast or is there not a beast? Let me ask you a different question. In number 5, is there a beast and is it alive?
Yes.
And in number 6, is there a beast and is it alive?
It's a dead beast.
So there is a beast in 6, but it's dead.
Yeah, you could say it that way.
Is that a good way to say it?
I'm not sure.
We'll ask Charity then, because Charity said there is no beast in 6. So I'll ask Charity the same question. Charity, is there a beast in 6? It's just dead.
Well, the verse I think is saying it's dead.
Sure, I'm not asking it about its mortality. I'm asking about if there's a beast there.
No, I'll say no.
So if you had a friend of yours that was alive, then died, and you buried them in a graveyard in a cemetery, if you went to see them before the second advent, they were a Christian, would they be buried under the ground? Are they there?
No, they would have decomposed, I think. Well, they're not there.
A week afterwards, before they decompose, are they there?
No, I'll say no.
Where are they then?
They're dead. They
The
don't
bones,
exist.
If we
It's redundant.
were to dig them up, would they be there?
the bones will be.
Well, the corpse is there,
Yeah,
but it's not like the person. It's just the body.
sure. But when we marry someone, do we marry whatever you just said, or do we marry the body?
We marry a person, which is breath of life plus
A big chunk of body.
yes.
I would contend if you found a body that was unattractive to you, you probably wouldn't marry them. I don't want to get into the finer intricacies of this because I don't think I think it ends up not taking us anywhere. But I want to contend that there is a beast in 6, it's just dead. Are we okay with that?
What does that mean then that it's there if it's dead?
If you were to drive along the road and you see some, I know it sounds horrible, but some roadkill, and it was a fox or a rabbit, you would have said, yesterday that rabbit was alive, and today that rabbit's there on the road, motionless, and it's dead. Isn't that how you would describe it?
Yeah.
So I'm suggesting it's the same in 6.
It's like an entity with no power. It just exists.
Even just in real life, you could walk past it and you could see, oh, that was that beast that was alive yesterday, and look at it, it's dead now.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I like that long yes. Blessing.
Yeah, I was just going to add to the example you gave earlier that I think we say when Jesus comes, the person resurrects from the grave where they were buried,
Yes.
indicating that they're there, basically.
Thank
Without
you.
getting into all the philosophical arguments, just, the simple model. Where you bury them is where they rest and where they come out from, so they're there.
Good. So I'll just make the summary, then I'll take Emma's point. When I started speaking about this particular aspect, Richard thought there might be a problem with number 6. And all I want to point out is that in the history of number 6, the sixth dispensation, there is a head and there is a beast, and that beast is dead there. But there is still one, there are still 7 beasts. 6 of them are alive and one of them is dead, but it's still there.
The woman's not actually sitting on the dead beast because the beast can't help the woman.
Well, she could sit on it, but it'd be like flogging a dead horse, that phrase. So there's not much point. It doesn't do anything if you were to sit on it. So she could have a go at sitting on it if she wanted to, I guess, in theory, but it wouldn't do much. So maybe she jumped on it, tried to get it to move, it didn't move, so she would have probably given up. Just being facetious about that particular point. So the answer is the beast is dead and the woman's not interested in dead things like most of us aren't. So I'll just go with Emma first, Titus, and then over to you.
Just saying, if we say there is no beast, we kind of destroy the model that these heads are on a beast. So we can't, what do we say it is then if we say there is no beast in itself, because it's still on a beast in the original model?
Is everybody okay with that?
I didn't really hear
I
clearly
didn't
what she was
properly
saying.
hear.
Yeah, we didn't hear what she was saying. If you could repeat it, Elder Parminder, that would be good. That would be better.
She's just going to move closer to
Okay,
my mic.
So I'm saying, if we say there is no beast, then we have a head by itself. But in the original picture, it's the 7 heads are on the beast. This 6th head is on the beast. You can't separate it from the beast. So the beast has to be there, but dead. Otherwise, you've got a head by itself, and that conflicts with what we've already been told.
Could we all hear that?
Yes, that was better.
Okay. If there's a head, either we're going to have this sort of head floating around in the ether doing things, or it's attached to the beast. And if there is a head, if there's 7 of them, it must be attached to the beast in that time period. And we haven't discussed what dead and alive mean. All we're just saying is that there are 7 heads and there's a singular beast in 7 dispensations, and that at the word picture of calling it a beast, they're all the same. So beast 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are all exactly the same. It's just that when you get to the 6th time period, that beast is identical to number 5 and number 7, but it's dead. And what our role is, once we've established all of that, is to try to make sense of it. We could call it prophetically or an application or if it's fulfillment. And that becomes a bit of a task. But at this level, if we get that correct, then we should be okay. Was it Titus, I think, had his point?
Yeah, I just I understood that and I related it to the parable of the tree in Daniel 3, where we have one tree and then it is cut and we have the tree stump, and then later something grows out of the tree stump. So when like the tree has been cut and we only have the stump, is like I related it, maybe the beast is dead but it's there.
Okay, I hope that helped somebody.
That's also when the great manifestation of the power of God from 1840 to 44 took place in that number 6. with the Millerite movement.
Okay, I'm okay with that. I think. Yep, I think so. So we've, just to summarize then, we've discussed dispensational and panoramic views, how we how we're supposed to understand that, and the relationship between the two is when you take a dispensational perspective and you use words. So I'm going to call it a picture, but a word picture of each dispensational view and make it the same. So instead of calling it a tree, a flower, and a field, we're going to call it plant, plant, plant. And as soon as you do that, then 1, 2, and 3 look identical. And when they look identical, then they take on all the properties of the panoramic view. So what's tucked into this word panoramic is the following. Let me do this first. So dispensational is different, and panoramic is the same, no change. So that means that at any point in our story, the panoramic view must always look the same, whether you're in dispensation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. At any moment, if you took a picture, it would always be identical. And in order to make it identical, you have to choose a symbol. I've called it a word picture that is the same. So we have 7 histories. It's called 7 heads. And the fact that it calls them heads means that they're all the same. It's chosen words or symbols, word pictures that are all identical. So each dispensation is identical according to Revelation 17, because it just says they're heads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It doesn't say they're any different. And then it says there's a singular beast, one beast, and therefore in those 7 dispensations, each of the beasts must be identical. And that's the relationship between dispensational views and panoramic views. When you're in a dispensational view, head 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 will look very different or different. And in a panoramic view, they'll all look identical. So wherever you were in history, if you So I'm going to go back to Ignatius's model. So if you're here and this is your eye and you're looking, when you take a dispensational view on your phone, if you looked at this part of the picture, the singular picture, we know in real life that looks different than if you looked at that part of the picture. That's why we do panoramic views, to take all the different parts into one. But in Revelation 17, when you look at the beginning or the middle or the end, it always looks the same. So it does meet the definition of panoramic because it's a sweeping view. But in this specific case, that sweeping view never changes, unlike, I'll call it the real world of mobile phones. When you take those panoramic pictures from left to right, they look very different. But in this chapter, when you look left to right, you take a big sweeping view, the picture never changes.
That why you know it's so important panoramic, because if it does change, you've got it wrong.
So I don't know if everybody could hear that. I'm going to ask you to just repeat that because they may not have heard it. And
I was just wondering, is that why panoramic's so important? Because if it's not all the same, you've done something wrong.
I'm going to say yes to that. That's one of the ways of checking this, which is why we should be very careful about going into Revelation 17 to prove this correct, because it becomes a sort of a circular argument. So I'm going to go to Andreas and then Blessing.
So I'm struggling a bit with the concept of how it's being used panoramic. And I think that, I mean, I understand, I think how you're trying to use it, but I think it's mixing what I think it's called mereology and taxonomy. So I think panoramic is about the logic of how components relate to each other and they make up a whole thing. And taxonomy is about categorization. And I don't think in this case, I mean, I think what we're trying to describe in this case is more related to taxonomy and not with panoramic. Like I think I wouldn't use panoramic to describe this concept.
You weren't here in February to straighten us out. So we've maintained this baggage since now. If you can, honestly, just inside, if you can come up with a better word so that we can conceptualize and model it, we've got one word, dispensation. If you can come up with a better word that has a sweeping overview from beginning to end that never changes, I'm completely open to it.
Yeah, I think it's so. I think the concept they call is taxonomy. So it's what is it? Category and kind. I don't know if that's if that would be good enough to. But if you look at object-oriented programming, they call it a class, which is something that has generic properties, and then you have an instance of that class or that object. So I think dispensation would be an instance of a general category, and all the instances look different to each other, but they all share the same properties as the class, because the class is generic. So I think I think object-oriented programming explains that better. But yeah.
If I wanted to use the word that most theologians are going to use, which is dispensations, what would then you use instead of that? Sorry, it's partner.
The partner of dispensation.
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't use dispensation. I think using dispensation for this would be wrong, in the sense that dispensation is about panoramic versus dispensation, and it doesn't fit what we're trying to describe here of something that's generic and then
Forget the generic bit. Do you agree that we have 7 dispensations?
do I agree that we have 7 dispensations?
Is that an appropriate word to use when we're dealing in the subject of, say, Bible prophecy, or yeah, I'll just stay with Bible prophecy. Is it appropriate to say we have 7 dispensations?
I'm not sure. I'd have to.
Okay. Blessing.
I almost feel like what I wanted to say is kind of irrelevant now. I was going to ask a question, whether it can be useful to call it an abstract view. That was my question, really. But I don't know how valuable that is after the conversation you just had with Andreas.
When you say abstract, could you just tell us what its partner would be? Or we compare abstract with, if panoramic is abstract, what would the dispensation? Would that just still be dispensation?
It would be concrete, I guess.
Okay.
It might not be very helpful. I don't know, in terms of how we,
It might help somebody.
conventionally talk about these things.
Without looking at the dates, do the 7 churches of Revelation 2 correspond with these dispensations of the heads? Or I don't want to take you off topic either.
I don't think it's that straightforward because dispensation 1 in Revelation 17 is Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, and the first church in Revelation 2 is a very different history.
Okay. Right. I thought I'd just quickly ask that.
Did that answer make sense?
Yeah, so no, they don't.
Okay, so I think it was a good question or good observation. So I've got concrete and abstract. Andreas, did you have your hand up?
No, it was from the other time.
Okay.
Is concrete the same as literal or not?
When you said concrete, Blessing, would literal be appropriate?
Well, I don't know if literal quite communicates.
Specific?
Specific would, yes. Specific versus generic.
And I think we used that word generic when we spoke about it in February. I think that was another word that we did end up gravitating towards. Specific and generic. Okay, so if we're okay up to that point, the question arose in Revelation 17, 1 and 2. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials. I guess a vial is some kind of bottle, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. So we're not going to go into all the details of that, but we'll notice that it uses a definite article when it says the great whore. And I'm assuming everybody knows the difference between when it says the definite article the, or just a generic term when it said a great person. It says the great person as opposed to a great person. And that's the difference between a generic person and a very specific one. And often when you use the definite article to say the great person, there's a built-in assumption in that statement that you already know, that whoever's reading that already knows who that person is. So somewhere else, you would have already known who that person was when it phrases it that way in the English. Now, I do know that this is not English, this is Greek originally, and sometimes we do have to be careful about translation from one language to another. But particularly in the King James, they're pretty careful, in my experience. I don't know if you'll agree, that when they do things like that, to say the great person as opposed to a great person, they're normally pretty accurate. They're very careful to make sure that they don't either use their own thoughts and ideas, but they're actually translating the concept or the very thought that was in the original Greek. So I'm going to suggest that when it says the great person, that's a correct translation. That's what the intent was in the original. Then it says, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. And then it says, so, and often we could substitute therefore, for that reason, the angel, I've added that bit in, carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-coloured beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So the question that's confronting us or before us is whether or not verses 1 and 2 are a panoramic view or they're a dispensational view. If they're panoramic, That's all good and well. Everybody hopefully now understands what that would mean. It's an abstract or generic view. If they're dispensational, then it'd be one of these 7 places, and we'd want to understand which one of the 7 it would be. So I'm going to we don't have that much time left, so I'm just going to hand it over to Emma to tell us what she says 1 and 2 is, verses 1 and 2, and why she says that. If that's okay. So this is we're all looking at this, and no one's saying that they've got the correct answer or anything, but we're just sharing our different thoughts.
So the context of the beginning of the verse is referring to these 7 vials, which are referenced in chapter 16, and we understand that to be the 7 last plagues. So to me, this puts it in kind of a time period of the end of the world. And then references the judgment, which is something that happens at the end, to this great whore that sits upon these waters. And then it goes into what she's done, why she's being judged. And then in verse 3, it goes to the history of that story.
So I've got chapter 16. How do we get back to chapter 16?
The vials, the 7 vials of the 7 plagues. These angels have the vials in 16.
So this is the vials, and the 7 plagues come from the 7 vials.
Yeah.
And you're saying that the plagues are at the end of the world.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
And then it's referencing the judgment of this whore, which is some kind of conclusion because of the actions done in verse 2.
So the judgment of the woman, and that's 17:1 or something in 16.
17:1, but you can reference 16 if you link it through Babylon, but that's obviously more complicated. But because Babylon's getting judged in 16. So there is a connection there between judging Babylon in 16. Is it verse 15?
So chapter 16 is judging Babylon, and chapter 17 is judging the woman. And you're saying they're the same thing.
I'm saying the same thing because we can see that the woman has Babylon, but that's later on. But yeah, I'm saying it's the same thing.
So you're saying the woman equals Babylon. Is that right?
Yeah.
And Isaiah 47.
Which is being judged for the actions done in verse 2. It's telling you why she's being judged.
Just for a second. Richard, if you want to speak, if you try to put your hand up, but separate to that, we can't go to other books, other chapters.
Okay.
Yep. So verse 2.
Verse 2, I think
What?
it's telling you why she's being judged. I show the judgment of the great whore that sits upon many waters. Because, I didn't say because, but she's committed fornication with these kings and she's made...
Slow down and speak louder.
Oh, okay, so she's committed fornication with these kings and made the inhabitants of the earth drunk. So to me, that's connected to why she's being judged. And then verse 3 takes us into the history of that process.
So I'll leave verse 3 for the moment. So 17:2. Simply put, you're saying that's the crime.
I guess, yeah.
So 17:1, that's the punishment, the judgment,
Yeah.
and verse 2 is the crime that she's committed. So I don't know if everybody got that, whether or not you agree or not. So I'm going to put the punishment which is the judgment and the crime. Anything more? Tell me why 1 and 2 is panoramic. Well, beginning 1, why is 1 panoramic? Or it's not panoramic?
I think it is panoramic, but I don't think you can tell that with just using that verse by itself
So
at this point.
tell me in verse 1 what's sort of what's panoramic about that. So that means verse 1 would apply to the fourth kingdom. So that could be a fourth kingdom.
Yeah, I think the dilemma in my head is whether that's actually panoramic or whether it's dispensation to the end of the world dispensation, as opposed to any other.
So we say number 1 isn't panoramic, it's dispensational.
Possibly, yeah.
Well, so that means possibly not. Give me the panoramic perspective.
Okay, so panoramic, it's just a whore sitting upon waters, and
That's going to be judged for a crime.
that's going to be judged, yeah.
So that
But
means
this picture of the whore with the waters, okay, judgment is specific.
so that would mean this woman sat on the fourth waters and is going to be judged.
No. So it can't be. The panoramic part is the action isn't panoramic.
Because if I go back to what you said it's taken from chapter 16, the vials, which are connected to the plagues, which you said was the end of the world.
Mm.
So there's not a panoramic view then.
No. So I think it's the complexity to me is that, okay, if it's dispensational to the end of the world.
What does that mean, dispensational to the end?
So this is about a specific point in time that's happening to the woman. She's being judged. So it's referencing a specific point in time when she'll be judged.
Dispensation in time.
Dispensation, specific point.
Yeah, so it's
Specific
one of,
dispensation.
so it's one of the dispensations.
So if it's the last dispensation, if it's the seventh dispensation, or which maybe I'm not saying which one.
You said the end of the world.
End of the world, yeah. So it's the seventh. With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication.
We'll just do verse 1 for the moment.
Okay.
Because that's the punishment.
Yeah. So it's
I've seen your hand, Charity. Keep it.
specific, yeah, specific. I think it's dispensation.
So which dispensation is verse 1?
The last one, the seventh.
Okay, so M saying, and is this what you said before? Or is this different to what you said before?
Yeah, I think it is different, yeah.
Okay, so you're saying it's the punishment of... Oops. You're saying verse 1 is the punishment of the woman, and you're saying it's the seventh dispensation.
Reason I said it was panoramic is because it's just a woman sitting upon waters doing these actions, and I don't know if you can say whether that's happening all through time or at one specific point. We don't know how long that's been going on for this judgment to take place. But if you're going to put it in if you're going to specify the judgment, then it has to be in a certain dispensation.
Okay, so I've got the seventh dispensation, and verse 2
is what she's done.
When?
Before the seventh.
So
but
that's
we don't have a time period for how long that's been going on.
all 6? All 7?
We don't know from this. Yes, could be. But could just be 2, 3, 4. We don't know at this point.
It could just be like
because she's been
the
doing
second
it.
dispensation, you mean?
She's been doing it. We don't know how long, when it started or when it finished. Well, we know it's going to finish in the seventh dispensation, but we could assume she's been doing it all the way through. That's why she's getting judged.
There's no assumptions.
It doesn't tell you when.
It doesn't make any difference. If this was a panoramic view, verse 2, it has to be the same as the dispensational view. They have to be identical.
Yeah.
So if it's panoramic, she would have had to be doing this at every stage, not at some of the stages.
Yeah.
So the question is this verse 2, is it about every single stage, which means it's panoramic, or is it talking about a specific dispensation, which would be identical to the other ones, but it's still specific?
Yeah.
Which one you want to go?
If it's all of them, is it not specific?
If it's
not
all of
specific to
them,
that
it's
dispensation.
panoramic.
But that's why I was saying originally it was panoramic, I think, because it was all of them.
So she's going to be punished at the end
Because of everything she's done.
for the crimes of number 1 and number 5.
Yeah.
Has she not already been punished for number 5?
Yeah.
So she's going to get punished twice for number 5. Because that would mean she would have to be punished twice all the time. Everything has to look the same.
Yeah, so it's either talking about the punishment for the 7th dispensation, or another one, or the 5th. You just said, has she been punished for the 5th? So it's either the 5th or the 7th.
I'll put 7th to keep it consistent. Charity.
Okay, so
Where do you
there's
want to be?
something.
Or are you
I,
asking a question?
no, there's something I'm noticing, and I'm just questioning myself about what you asked. So I don't know. I'll just say out my thoughts, and then we'll see if it's of any help.
Before you do that, tell us what I asked that made you have this thought.
You asked whether verse 1, to identify verse 1 and 2 either being a dispensational view or panoramic view. Yes?
Go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, in verse 1, you have an angel coming to speak to John, right? And as the angel comes to speak to John, they're telling John about, it's sort of like summarizing what he is going to be shown in the vision, if that makes sense. So I'm thinking that where the verse begins, it begins where John is standing before he is shown the rest of the vision or whatever is happening with the judgment of the woman. So I'm thinking it could be the dispensation in which John was living. That's where the angel comes to John and then speaks to John. And then in verse 3, he's then carried away to a different place.
If I just stop you for a moment. So if we go to verse 1, part A. So this is for Emma. An angel comes to John and says, I'm going to show you something. We're going to put the TV on, or we're going to open a book, or something is going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. I haven't shown you anything yet. And Charity has said that happened in 100 AD. He's on Patmos, and an angel visits him and says, I'm going to show you something. Are you okay at that point, Emma? So Charity's position is verse 1, part A is 100 AD, This is just the introductory thought that an angel visits John literally on Patmos and says, we're going to be doing something. Are you okay with that? Okay, so she's okay with that. So the first bit we can sort of just put to one side, and I'm going to suggest we're at the semicolon. Come here, come hither, semicolon in the King James. Over to you, Charity.
Okay, so basically the angel is saying to John, come and I'll show you what's going to happen to this woman as the woman is going to be judged, right? Which is, I'll say, the same as verse 2. It's just continuing the same thought of the angel telling John what's going to happen.
So I'll just stop there. So the sentence says, I'm going to show you the judgment of the great person who sits on many waters. So you agree with that? That's all he's going to say. I'm going to show you this woman, this great woman that's going to be judged. And the woman that I'm referring to is the one that sits on waters. Continue, Charity. Do you want to just in verse 1, the 1b, because that's what we're really talking about. What do you see that as? Do you see that as a very specific thing or a general thing? Is it dispensational? Is it panoramic? And if it is dispensational, what dispensation do you see it referring to?
Okay, so I'll say in the verse 1 part B, it's generic because the angel is telling John this great person or woman is going to be judged, and this woman sits upon many waters. So it's not speaking about a specific time period, but it's talking about what the woman does in general.
So if we go back to say something like maybe this, in general, if we take the heads and the beasts, and I'm not saying that the waters are those things because it's going to define to us what waters are afterwards. What's the woman generally doing? Sitting on waters. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Generally. So is she generally being judged?
No, she's being judged for something that she did specifically, I think.
Okay. And would that judgment be at the beginning of something or at the end of something?
I would say at the end, because she would have to do something first, and then she is given, if I can say, probationary time, and then at the end, she's judged for her works.
So would it be, if this is dispensation 1, is it talking about this judgment or 2 or 3, etc.? Or is it talking about I'm going to call this the beginning and the end, or panoramic view, or is it talking about this judgment? Is it the very end of dispensation 1 or the very end of dispensation 2, 3, 4, etc.? Is it the very end where that waymark is this one here, or is it this one? So I'll say it specifically, is it the end of 7 or is it the end of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7?
Mm. Okay, I'll say the end of 7.
Okay, so you're saying it's the same as Emma, the seventh dispensation.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go into verse 2 then.
I think verse 2 is basically sort of like repeating and enlarging what has been said in part B. That's what I think, that, you know, the woman was basically committing fornication with the kings.
The kings of 7, like Emma says.
No, the kings of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, is there a king in 6? I don't know.
Sorry?
The kings of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I heard that. You said something else at the end, which I didn't catch.
No, I just said I don't know if there's a king in 6, but yeah, I'll just say from the first one to the last. That,
Okay, so only 6 of the kings.
but now I'm not sure if there's. Okay, yes, only 6 of the kings. We'll say only 6.
Only because you said you gave us that number, 1, 2, 3, 4. I didn't feed that to you. You did that. Just want to double check.
I know. I didn't want to mention it, just came in my mind, and then I just, got stuck on.
How did it get into your mind? Was that a sort of a bodily function or a...
No, when I was counting the kings and then I landed on 6, then I started thinking about other things
Yeah.
concerning 6.
No, I was just
And
wondering,
then that confused me.
I was wondering if it was your personality or your body that's doing that. Just not sure.
Probably my personality.
Not your body. Okay. Just to make sure it's not your body. Okay, so
No.
we've got both of you saying that, and Emma saying it's the 7th king, I guess. Kings in the 7th, and you're saying it's all 7 kings.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just want to go back
Can
to
I explain why I think it's all 7?
just want to go back to Emma first.
Okay.
So well, I'll just go to verse 2, Emma. Which kings are you talking about here? Because you said it was a 7th dispensation.
I think it's the kings at the end. And in the seventh dispensation.
So because we're running out of time, what Emma's saying is that this is the 10 horns, because I read the verses, equals the 10 kings.
And I'm picking that up from Kings of the Earth because it uses the phrase Kings of the Earth and it uses the same phrase for this. Lost the verse. The last verse, I think it is in the chapter. And the one which thou sawest that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth in verse 18.
Okay, and so he's picked up the word earth. Who's our moderator here? Because we're at 12:20. I don't want to go over time. So I'm waiting for whoever it is to tell me. So I'm just going to. Oh,
I have a question. I don't know if it's a general statement over the kings of the earth, and this problem Charity's having with like the 6th, if there's one king that doesn't have to in that model, does that destroy the argument, or does it undo what we're saying? Because it wouldn't be panoramic then. Is that what we're saying?
so I will try to answer that in a minute. Charity?
Yes.
Remind us, remind us what you're going to tell us now.
Oh, about the 7 kings?
Okay.
Is that what you're talking about?
I don't know. You said you're going to tell us something.
Okay. I was saying the reason why I'm thinking that it's what the woman is being judged, or rather, what the fornication that she's being judged for is with the kings, and these kings are the seven kings from the first one. And the reason why I was saying that is because when the angel is coming to speak to John and wants to show the judgment of the woman at the end, it has to be something that she has done for over a period of time. It can't be something that she did for just one dispensation or just one period. It has to be all throughout the time before. So that's why I'm thinking it's being taken back all the way to the first king or the first head. So those kings that she committed fornication with are the kings from the first king from the beginning.
Are you okay that a king is a kingdom?
Yes.
Are you okay that a kingdom is a mountain?
Yes.
Are you okay that a mountain is a head?
Yes.
So that means she commits fornication with 7 heads. Is that right?
6 out of 7, maybe. She couldn't commit fornication with the sixth one.
Okay, so if I go to verse 2, with whom some of the kings have committed fornication, not all of them.
Okay, for now, I'll say let's put it on 7 for now. If it doesn't make sense later, then we can get rid of it.
Okay, so my question is, do the 7 heads commit fornication with the woman?
Yes. Well, yes.
So I say specifically, does the 6th head sleep with her?
Well, I'll using the information that's further down the verses, I would say no.
So you know it's no.
Yes.
Okay, so if it's no for this, then what's the answer for this one? Fornication with 7 heads. Is that a no?
For which one? For the 7th?
We're here where I've got a no.
Okay.
Line above, fornication with 7 heads. That must be a no as well, then, yes?
Yes.
And that must mean here that it's not there. In verse 2, those kings can't be the 7 heads.
Ah, okay. I see what you mean.
It's not the 7 heads. It can't be a panoramic perspective because she
Oh,
would
you're
have
saying if it's not 7, then it's not panoramic because it's not the same in every dispensation.
exactly. If it for a panoramic view, it has to be identical every single time. And we know one of them it isn't. So therefore it wouldn't be a panoramic view because not all 7 kings.
Okay. So so then would that mean that these kings that she commits fornication with are general kings? They're not,
What's a general king mean?
by general, I mean, uh,
They're
it's
not
not
panoramic.
pointing to the kings that are spoken of in this chapter.
I don't know which kings it's referring to, but it's dispensational ones.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
I
It
don't know
cut off.
which kings it's referring to, but it's dispensational ones, not panoramic ones.
Ah, okay. I get you.
Richard.
So when it says sitteth upon many waters, could that be the dispensation of the kingdoms until you get to whom the kings of the earth? So from 1798, then that's the kings of the seventh, because some people say the seventh kingdom was 1798, because they must interpret that way. So John's being given a vision from the angel of the great hall that sits upon many waters, all those different dispensations of the kingdoms, and then we get to 1798, where it's the kings of the earth that have committed fornication within and made the inhabitants drink of the wine of the wrath of fornication.
So
As he homes in to the judgment, because in Daniel you see the judgment of the little horn.
let's avoid Daniel if we can.
Okay.
Let me ask you some questions on verse 1.
Yes.
Are you saying that verse 1, we are talking about the second part of the verse, where it says, I will. Are you saying that's a panoramic view? That these waters are all the waters she sat through throughout history?
Yeah, but it seems to come short at the seventh kingdom.
So
I can't get around that.
we'll just say yes.
Only through verse 2 then.
I'm already in verse 1. So you said yes to that. So by the time you get to the very end of number 7, which is what we've got here, then that's when the judgment would be.
Yes.
So,
but he's been shown everything from
the
start to
let me ask a question. Yeah, let me ask a question.
Like Moses was quickly before you.
Let me ask a question then, because I'm not worried about Moses. So at the very end, that woman, is she going to be judged for the crimes of the fourth woman?
Yes.
Seventh woman going to be judged for the crimes of the fourth woman? You're saying yes.
It shows you that that woman, that entity,
What did
throughout the ages, like
let me say the fifth woman. Maybe that might be easier. Why would the seventh woman be punished for the crimes of the fifth woman when they're not the same woman?
because he's committed the same acts.
So is she being punished? Is the seventh woman being punished because she did the same thing as the fifth? She's not being punished for the crimes of the fifth.
She's been doing the same acts as all the others previously.
Okay? If you did the same acts, what would you be punished for? Your acts or someone else's acts?
But it's also this entity with an ideology. It's like the same kind of.
Let's not do that.
Iniquity going all through. So it's the same.
Let's not use an entity with an ideology. Just try to go through with what I'm asking.
An ideology that uses entities.
Let's not use that phraseology.
Okay, all right then.
Modeling.
Yeah, there's something that I'm not quite understanding, but that seems to be.
Let me ask my question again, Richard. Put all these thoughts and ideas aside. I just want to ask a very simple question. If you did a crime and your crime looked very similar to the crime that someone did 500 years ago, it was identical crime, in fact, and you got caught, would you be punished for the crime that was done 500 years ago, or would you be punished for the crime that you did, even though they're the same crimes?
For the one that I did.
Okay, so do you agree that you wouldn't be punished for the crime that was done 500 years ago?
It's the same
crime, but would you be punished?
Same punishment for the same crime.
But would you be punished for the 500-year-old crime?
No, because that's already been done, but that crime still exists. So I've committed it again 500 years later, so I'm being punished for committing that same crime that was done 500 years before.
Yeah, but are you being punished for your crime?
Yes.
Or not the 500-year-old crime?
No, but it's that same crime that I committed.
Okay,
years ago.
I know.
So the crime still exists.
The crime doesn't still exist.
Well, it's still being committed. It's still 500 years later. It's someone else who's done it. Me.
Yeah. So is it fair for you to be punished for the 500-year-old crime or only for the one that you did?
It's the same. It's the same. It's the same result.
Now I'm asking which one you're going to be punished for,
The one I did.
not the one that was done by someone else.
No. Yeah, it's the same. It's the same act.
I'm not asking about the act. I'm asking about what you're being punished for.
I've been punished for doing that same act, that same crime.
Your act.
The one that I chose to do, the
Yeah.
one that I did, or I
Yeah.
got tempted to do, or whichever
One
way
you
you look
did.
at it.
So
As
the one that you did, we're okay with that. My question is, are you going to get punished for the one that you didn't do? You seem reticent to answer that one.
No, yeah, I'm trying to think. Trying to see where you're coming from. No, because I
I'm
haven't
trying to
done
come
it.
from anywhere. I'm just asking
No,
you a
no,
simple
but
question on
yeah,
law.
no, because
Will
I
you
haven't
get
done it
punished for crimes that you didn't do?
for the ones that I've. But it's the
No,
same crime that it's been committed. They're doing the same character. They've got the same. The Seventh Kingdom's the same characteristics of all the ones before, but even worse.
it doesn't make any
It's a
difference. The
great war.
question is, would you think it's reasonable for you to be punished for someone else's crime?
Well, Lucifer's going to be. If
I'm asking about you, not Lucifer.
no,
Okay, so hopefully we're okay that you won't get punished for someone else's crime.
I'm in enough trouble as it is, though.
Exactly. We're all in enough trouble for our own crimes. We don't need to take on the burden of someone else's. We can all agree with that.
Yeah.
So in verse 2, this crime that's been committed and you're going to be judged for it, you can't be judged for someone else's crime. You can only be judged for your crime. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, but what I was trying to say is they're the same crimes that have been previously done. So it's just the same crime, but a different person committing it.
So,
Doesn't that come into it anywhere, or there's something I'm not
yeah,
seeing?
so you got, don't take this personally, you got stopped for a speeding ticket and you go to court and they say, we're going to punish you because you were speeding. And then they're going to say, also, Hitler was speeding when he was 25, and we're going to add that punishment to yours because it was the same crime. He sped and you sped. Would you say, oh, that's fine? In fact, add all the punishments for all the millions of people that have all done speeding. You wouldn't think that's fine, I don't think. You don't.
No.
I'm only going to get punished for my speeding, not anybody else's speeding. They'll say, yeah, but they all look the same to us. And you'll say, I don't care if they're all the same. I'm only going to get punished for my one, not the other people's one. All good?
Yeah. So it's finding out.
Finding
I see the
what?
problem now. I can see why there is a big problem with panoramic and dispensational because
Good.
you can kind of see both, but then we need to sort of there's something that we ain't getting.
Okay, exactly that point that you've just said. When we deal with the panoramic and the dispensational, the way we handle those, we have to be really, really careful because what we end up thinking is that it's the same woman, so she's going to get punished for everybody's crimes because they all look the same. And it doesn't work like that in real life. And Emma's desperate to comment.
Just make the point that the woman doesn't get punished at the fifth. It's the beast that gets the wound, not the woman. So the woman doesn't ever get punished till the end, you could argue. But that's one point. Think about that one. The second point is going.
So I have no idea what you just said.
I said, in this modelling, in this story, this woman doesn't get punished until the end, I don't think. Because
You've already said verse 1.
yes.
Seventh dispensation, no problem.
So the point you've been making about the fifth, she gets punished again for the crimes of the fifth. In the story, she's not the one that gets the punishment under the fifth. It's the beast that receives the deadly wound, or the beast and the heads that are spoken about as being alive and not alive.
Who are you talking to?
You.
You said verse 2 is seventh dispensation, all good.
Yeah, but now we've moved on to this argument. I'm just addressing that point.
Only because Richard said, I only addressed Richard's specific point that he said the many waters in verse 1 was all the waters of history.
But you said that to me in the beginning as well.
Sorry?
You said, so, because when we were going through it, you said, when I said it was the fifth, you made that point before about the woman game.
He said the many waters in verse 1
Yeah.
was a panoramic perspective.
Okay, sorry. We'll need to wind up because it's now 24 minutes to 1.
Okay, so I'm going to summarize.
One last point.
One last point. After one last point.
Just about that, the 7 kings, what Charity was saying about the 7 kings being, does it have to be all 7 of them? But we say the woman sits on 7 heads, but we're going to say she doesn't sit on all 7 of them, even though the wording says she sits on all 7. So the question is, does she have to have committed fornication with all 7 to get punished? Just put there.
And the woman changes into a city.
What's the point, Emma?
The point is, we say that the woman sits on 7
No,
heads.
the point, not the descriptor. What's the point you're making?
The point is, does she have to have committed fornication with all 7? If we say that it's the 7 kings, this was connected to Charity's point about the kings of the earth, this struggle over the 6th and 7th. She doesn't seem to have done it with the 6th. Does she have to have done it with all 7? It just says it's a general descriptor. She's committed fornication with kings. Does it have to be all of them to be punished for it?
Well, which
That's my
one?
only question.
Which kings are they? You've said they're 10 kings at the end.
Yes.
Charity
So it
says they're 7 kings.
That's just a question. Does it have to be all 7?
And your answer is?
Yes, if it's panoramic, if we're correct about what a panoramic is. Yeah. But
Are you saying yes to yourself or yes to me? I don't know.
Just a question, because she sits
No
on
questions. We've
7
run out of time.
heads, so she's sitting on all 7. Okay, never mind, stop then.
Okay, so hopefully we've got a better perspective of dispensational and panoramic. So I'm going to say when Emma says, if our view of panoramic is correct, it is correct. Not if it is. Pretty sure it's correct.
It is.
It is correct.
All agree.
And we're in verses 1 and 2 trying to understand whether or not verse 1 and 2 are a panoramic perspective or a dispensational perspective. And Emma's saying that verse 1 is the 7th dispensation, the judgment that's happening at the very end of that, which means that the waters that she's sitting on are the 7th waters. And in verse 2, the crime that she committed was having fornication with the 10 horns. And Charity agrees with Emma's perspective on verse 1, but in verse 2 says that's the 7 heads that she's committing fornication with. And Emma says that works, even though she really only did it with 6 of them, because there's an argument to be made how to resolve that. That's as far as we got today. Hopefully we can continue this study both individually and as a group. I want to thank everybody for joining me today. Let's close with prayer. In a second. Let's pray. Holy God, we thank you that despite Revelation 17 being a very difficult chapter to try to understand and conceptualize, that you can continue to guide and direct us. And slowly but surely, we have confidence that we will come to a correct understanding of how to view these words, these symbols, and these verses. Continue to guide and bless us, and may we continue to worship you during these sacred hours. In Jesus' name, amen.